My name's Rebecca, and this short video is going to look at ways in which we can help the more distracted dogs in our group class environment. So this can apply to puppies where we expect a certain level of distraction, and it can apply to adolescents and to older dogs, but it is specifically where we're looking at a group class environment where they've come together with other dogs in order to learn. And what I would say is, like with anything that we approach, we want to be preventative in advance. We want to put in place what we call management to make sure the unwanted behaviour of being distracted doesn't play out, rather than being reactive and waiting for it to happen and then dealing with it. In reality, we have to do a little bit of both, but certainly the more that we can prepare the owner and the dog and ourselves and the environment in advance, then the better. With the owner, what I like to do, and you may have a version of this, you may just still be planning classes, so you're kind of looking for ideas, but I like in some way to bring the group together. So once everybody is booked into place, and you've filled your class, it can be really beneficial then to meet them as a group. Now you could do this face to face at the venue. You could do it without the dogs at the venue. You may even roll into that a little bit of a session on positive reinforcement training, body language, something to add value. Or you might just meet them there to show them around and have a chat. Or you might meet them on Zoom. Or send a group email, a WhatsApp, whatever works for you. It can be really just beneficial to set the tone before the classes start. And what you'll do in that meeting, no matter how you host it, is explain to the owners a little bit about how things are going to run, what to expect, and really importantly, what to bring. So for example, you might wish to say that you'll bring a little mat for the dog to settle on. And again, that'll depend on your training environment, if that's feasible. If you're outdoors in the winter, that mightn't be. But it's just a nice way to set the dog up for success if they can bring something for the dog to have more chance of relaxing on it. You may even then use that as a settle exercise within the class and a way to demonstrate to the owner how to set their dog up to relax. Added to that, then you might want to advise them to bring a Kong that's stuffed or a chew for the dog to work on, or perhaps a toy, or all three. You may want to encourage them to try, bring a bag full of things to try. And within that dialogue, what you can do is start to pepper in a little bit of added value, where you discuss not just bringing a chew, but what kind of chew is really useful for our dog. The fact that a pizzle stick is going to last much longer and relax a dog much more than a dentist stick that they're going to eat in 3 minutes. You can discuss Kong fillings and the fact that they can freeze the Kong to make it last longer. So it's just a little way to sneak in a bit of added value. But what you will know is that the dog is going to turn up on the day and the owner is going to be prepared. Then your preparation that you have control over is how you set up your class. Now I say you've got control over that. We obviously all need to work with what we've got, especially if we rent a premises. You mightn't have the luxury of the most perfect training setup, but you can certainly make the best of your training setup. And in terms of setting the dog up for success and not to be distracted, we want to have as much space between the dogs as possible. That's one of our 3 Ds in training: distance, duration, and distraction. Well, we want to have as much distance between the dogs to limit the distraction. And what we can then do is week on week or exercise by exercise is tweak that variable to demonstrate to the owner progress. So maybe week 3, you get them loosely walking past each other 2 meters apart, and you point out that week 1, you were 5 meters apart and look how much you progressed. But also you know that you're going to set the dog up to succeed if they come in to the environment and they're stood or they're sat as far away from the other dogs as is feasible. If, like me, you don't have a very strong projection in your voice, you might want to invest in a little kind of headphone set that projects your voice. That can help. One thing I didn't mention there that I do like to do is guide the owners in one by one and point out to them where their station is. That's a much calmer way to enter the training environment for the dog rather than it be kind of like, all in at once. And B, what can happen is then the next week you can tweak which dog you put where based on how that first week has gone. This is being filmed during the social distancing and various lockdowns, so we have that kind of protocol in place now as essential, but really it's good practice anyway. You might even want to have people wait in their cars and you invite them in one by one, and that's going to be a really calm, orderly, nice, gentle way for the dog to kind of acclimatise, to the environment, have a good sniff but not be overwhelmed. So they're prepped in advance, they've come in nice and calmly, they're all stood or sat as far apart as you can make it. You then might want to consider some form of visual barrier, and this might be set up in place already between every station, or you might have a couple of kind of mobile ones that you're ready to slide into place if and when it's needed. This can be really useful for puppy class whenever they just really want to have a party with each other. But if, for example, you're doing a reactive dog class, it's going to be essential. And again, it's a variable that you can tweak week on week to show progress. If all your barriers are up between each station week 1 and by week 6 are all down, that's something you can point out to people. Bear in mind, some of our breeds are bred to clock and to react to visual stimulus and movement. Those breeds then, if you realise you've got kind of 4 collies in your class, you might go, okay, I think I'll definitely put the barriers up this week because it can't really do much harm. Yes, we can have barrier frustration, but if we're talking about distractions, we'll look at having a barrier as a way to help. Once the class is running, then if you notice a dog is just more distracted than the others and they're more distracted than the owner can cope with, you want to do a little bit of subtle individual coaching. You might ask that owner and get their kind of agreement in it to move slightly further back. Or you might swap them with another dog if it's not the dogs that are distracting them, but it's something maybe going past them if you're outdoors. You'll want to have a little look at what the owner's training with, what food they're using. If it's dry and biscuity, I always say you've got to at least come next week and try something a bit tastier, a bit meatier, a bit more palatable to see if that makes a difference. I'd also then be looking, this is kind of on down the list, but it's one of the more important ones. So everything else is in place. All the other dogs are coping. The dog in question has got really nice, high value chicken. I'd then be looking at the owner, their body language, their demeanour, their way with their dog. Are they demotivating the dog, and is the distraction that the dog is showing actually a form of displacement insofar as, avoidance? You're a bit pressured and you're being a bit full on, so I'm just going to get distracted with things over here, because we know that relationship plays a massive part into training success. Now, if it's a puppy and they're just being a puppy, then we're not really thinking as much along those lines, but you kind of always have it in your head. And the more experience you gain, the more you'll see things that are little indicators as to, okay. And what we do with that one then is a little bit subtler. I like to give group messages. If I've clocked something, for example, an owner's being very heavy on the lead, and I don't want to go over and, point that straight out to them, I might decide, right, the next exercise we're actually going to do loose lead, and I'm going to do that method where they hold the lead, by their waistband, so that they can't pull it and their hands have to stay by their waistband. And I would just use that as maybe an example to point out to the owners that they can use their voice, that they can use, other ways in which to encourage the dog to be with them. Or I might give a general message to the group about, make sure we're not being heavy-handed on the lead, relax your shoulders. Were they actually quite tense? Okay, let's keep reminding ourselves of that. But you don't want to isolate anyone or alienate them and make them feel a bit uncomfortable. So yeah, that's your one that's bubbling away, looking at the owner and the handler and how much of what they are doing is leading to the puppy or the dog getting very distracted because they're just not engaged, and there's a reason for that lack of engagement. But you've gone from all the things you have complete control over, then down to the more subtle things that might take a bit of a longer term relationship with the owner to tweak. If I have had to actively sort of move a dog further away, put them in a slightly different area, whatever I've had to do, I will always touch base with that owner at the end of the class to make sure they feel okay about things, to tell them something that went really well for them, and to say to them, listen, next week we'll do this. I've at times maybe emailed someone afterwards as well, or if I haven't been able to speak to them, just something to make sure they're not left feeling like they were the special dog in the corner, and that's a bad thing, because we know that's not what it's about. We're just setting our dogs up for success. So you've got your prep in advance, advising the owners what to bring. You've got your management of the environment, setting it up to be as least distracting as possible. You've then got your observation of what the owner's using as food, what the relationship seems to be like with the dog, how are they handling the dog, using your activities, using the kind of flow of the class to help. If a dog is getting super distracted, can the next exercise be a really easy win, so that, at least the owner goes home and says, oh, they were great at this. And then just looking at things week on week as they progress, and looking at where is your benchmark for, okay, things are not improving, we need to have a one-to-one, or you need to come to a slightly different class, but that's kind of your last resort after you've tried all the rest of it. I hope that helps. I hope that's given you some food for thought. If you're doing classes, I'm sure that's a lot of what you do anyway. If you're planning classes, then hopefully that gives you a bit more guidance in terms of what to plan for.